I kind of have a slight issue with articles like this, but you got to listen, to learn why I have an issue with these kind of articles. Good morning. I came across an article that talked about the 9 best foods for lowering blood pressure. And I wanted to talk about this. I'm going to mention the foods that were mentioned in the article, but I also want to offer my vantage point about this because I kind of have a slight issue with articles like this. But you got to listen, to learn why I have an issue with these kind of articles. Now, so the foods that they mention are: 1, bananas; 2, berries, leafy greens, garlic, beans, tofu, which is basically soy, fatty fish, like salmon and I think mackerel, tuna, beets, and dark chocolate. Now, bananas are recommended because they're high in potassium, and you may have heard me talk about this before. Potassium and sodium kind of like have to be in a certain balance for the water in your body to kind of be the way it needs to be. If you lean too much on the sodium side, then that can cause more of water retention. So your kidneys really require a certain kind of balance of sodium and potassium. That's why a lot of us have so many issues, because we consume so much sodium and not enough potassium. Berries have what you call anthocyanins, which are pigments in the berries that actually help the endothelial cells, which are in your blood vessels. They help those to work right. So I'm guessing that helps them to, you know, make the blood vessels more flexible, which you can see how that would directly affect blood pressure. You have leafy greens, which have nitrates and potassium in them. Nitrates, that's kind of related to nitric acid, which can open up the blood vessels. Garlic, in and of itself, lowers the blood pressure. I think that garlic has some sort, like it has blood thinning properties, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, blood thinning, you figure your blood is thinner, it's easier to pump through your blood vessels. And you have tofu, which is high in potassium and magnesium. You have beans, which are high in potassium, magnesium, and fiber, all of which help to lower the blood pressure. You have fatty fish, which the omega 3s in fatty fish. Again, when talking about fatty fish, we're talking about salmon, mackerel. Salmon is the main one I think about because it's like the one I really like to eat. But it's the omega 3s in fatty fish that actually help to lower blood pressure. Omega 3s and omega 6s, we tend to eat a whole lot more omega 6s because of our diet here in America. And omega 3s help to thin the blood, but there's a special, your body likes a certain kind of balance between omega 3s and omega 6s. So a lot of us are just imbalanced. Um, Beets, which have nitrate in them, nitric acid, remember that. And then dark chocolate apparently is good too, even though, I wonder when people say dark chocolate, if they're really and truly talking about sweetened dark chocolate, or if they're talking about like dark chocolate where, it's like pretty much bitter. Now, here's why I wanted to talk about this article, because I think that when we start to try to focus on single foods to lower our blood pressure, that we kind of run the risk of kind of messing up. Why, do you ask? Because, for example, I like bananas. I like bananas, and I actually eat them relatively often. I might eat like one or two every other day, and we keep them in the house. However, when we talk about single foods lowering blood pressure, whether it be bananas or berries or whatever, how much of that food is going to lower the blood pressure and how much is it going to lower the blood pressure? You see what I'm saying? Because a lot of times in our society, this is why we get articles like this. Like I say, there's value in them because it helps you to understand why natural foods are actually good for you and how they support the body. But let's be real. Am I going to go and start eating what? Like 20 bananas a day to get blood pressure lowering benefits? Because the thing is, I'm sure one banana is not going to have that significant of an effect. Garlic. I like garlic, but I'm not gonna go and start eating tons and tons of garlic. Sometimes I swallow garlic whenever I feel myself coming down with an illness or something like that. But like I'm not gonna be like ingesting copious amounts of this stuff. So I think we kind of have to be, and even fatty fish. I love salmon, for example, but like you even have to be careful with how much you consume fish, unfortunately, because of how we as humans have contaminated our water bodies of water with mercury and metals and things like that. So you kind of have to like, I think you're supposed to consume a maximum about 3 times a week or something like that because of the mercury content. So my point is, this is why I don't necessarily like to talk about single foods. But if you notice something, potassium, again, you need enough potassium in your diet. Plant foods are generally high sources of potassium. Yes, you have those outliers like bananas, potatoes, but just fruits and vegetables in general tend to have higher sources of potassium. So what does this tell me? This tells me that more than likely, a lot of us aren't eating our vegetables and our fruits. I'll say vegetables especially because everybody kind of likes to go after the sweeter stuff. But my point is, I think part of the reason why we have issues with not getting enough potassium is because we don't eat enough plant food. We don't eat enough vegetables. So this is what this kind of article usually tells me. I'm not going to go and start eating, even though I do eat a lot of greens. At the same time, though, I think the emphasis is, okay, are you lowering your sodium in your diet by not doing a lot of added salt? Even though I've heard also that salt is not as much of an issue for blood pressure as we thought it was. And I'll say something about that a little later. But anyway, that said, having a diet that emphasizes vegetables first, then fruits. I believe those should be the main part of pretty much everybody's diet. A diet that emphasizes those foods, I think, is the key rather than, okay, so if I just buy bananas and berries and tofu and greens and I just eat all these every single day, um, I'm gonna have a boring, kind of weird diet. Or if I just focus on one of these that I like, I'm gonna eat like 8 bowls of beans a day. If you are cool with that, you can do that. But again, I think the point more so is, how are you generally fashioning your diet? The totality of what you eat matters. So know that the foods that I mentioned, I'm going to link to this article in the description, but these can help to lower your blood pressure, but it has to be a part of like a whole thing. So include these and kind of take out some of the other stuff. Let these replace some of what you're eating now, like especially packaged processed junk food. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention was this whole thing about sodium and the possibility that it may not have as big of an effect on blood pressure as has been touted for the past many decades. Now, I don't have all of the research and all that kind of stuff present today, but I've heard that in literally this year, I think was the first time I heard that. And in particular, I've heard that it's not salt that is as much of an issue as it is sugar. Sugar is more the issue. And sugar in particular, if I'm not mistaken, it affects your blood vessels. It affects the way that your blood vessels function. Okay. And so that, oh, I think it's sugar that decreases nitric acid or something like that, which will make your blood vessels kind of constrict more. And so, therefore, and think about it. And to me, it kind of makes sense because our diets are so sugary. Everything has corn syrup in it, everything has sugar in it. And we consume sugar all day long. And this cumulative effect raises our blood pressure. So, lower your sugar too. Lower your sugar. Sugar is worse than we realize. Okay? So, change your diet, incorporate these foods, but let them replace the junk food that you're eating. Lower your sugar. Generally lower your sodium too. But you don't have to go start eating 20 bananas a day. I think that's kind of unreasonable. That's why I'm skeptical of these kind of articles. Hopefully this helps y'all. Have a good morning. If you like this content, you might also be interested in one of my books. Learn how you can take steps literally today to successfully manage, control, and overcome common issues such as high blood pressure, diabetes, and belly fat. It's all about putting power back in your hands to improve your own health. Get your book copy today by the links in the description or by visiting seanmcclennan.com/books. Also, don't forget, hit the like button and subscribe and join my email list at seanmcclennan.com/subscribe.